What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Ango Show live today. It's September 5th, 2024. We're going to be talking a little bit about AEW Dynamite, some good, some bad. And of course, we got a variety of other topics we're going to be discussing today. So I want to say thank you for spending your afternoon with me. And if you're not watching live, maybe you're watching this on demand, I appreciate you too. If you guys could do me a favor, go ahead and click like. And if, you guys want to support the channel, help a brother out, drop a super chat. Consider doing that if you want. You don't have to. You don't have to give me your money. I don't need your money. But if you want to support, super chats guarantee that your questions and comments get read. And on top of that, just as a reminder, we will be live tomorrow as well, because we're live Monday through Friday at 12 p.m. Eastern. Tomorrow, we're going to be doing predictions for AEW All Out. Today, we're talking Dynamite and so much more. Hopefully, you guys are all doing good. I got my water from the Coldest Water. One of the best companies I've worked with. This thing stays cold all day. You guys want one, use code Ango. Link in the description. Hopefully you guys are all doing good, though. I thought Dynamite yesterday was okay. There were some things I liked. There were some things I disliked. I'm going to be honest with you guys. I think the main thing that everybody's talking about when it comes to Dynamite last night was Hangman Page and Swerve Strickland, and rightfully so, because that was probably one of the coolest things that AEW has ever done. Unfortunately, it happened on a show that only had like 2,800 people in attendance. So that's unfortunate. AEW is still struggling to sell tickets. They're struggling to get viewership. I think there's a variety of reasons for that, and we're probably going to talk about that later on. But I think we should talk a little bit about Dynamite first, and then we'll get into some other topics that I have. And trust me, I have my notes written down, so we will talk about it. Yeah. I think we should just jump into it. If you guys want your comments or questions to get read, dropping that super chat guarantees that your questions and comments get read. Or if you become a member on the channel, consider doing that. Shout out to all the members that we got in the chat. Todd Crow, Robin Plays Games, Raging Girl Gamer. I see some more. Who else we got in here? A lot of OGs in the chat as well. Appreciate y'all. Appreciate y'all. Appreciate y'all. Okay, listen, let's talk about Dynamite, because Tony Khan is, I don't know. This guy is very inconsistent. This guy has some good stuff. This guy has some bad stuff. I have no idea what the hell they are doing. Overall, I feel like AEW just lacks vision, to be honest. I feel like I say this all the time. This year has been so good creatively, but we get into these episodes where it's just like no momentum. And, you know, at the show, okay, what the hell? It says OBS is disconnected. Is that true? Are we still live? Can you guys hear me? Hopefully we're still live. It looks like we're still live. Okay, cool. So, yeah, guys, this is where I get kind of annoyed, right? AEW starts off hot. We get MJF and Daniel Garcia. I mean, if there was ever a time for Daniel Garcia to really show that he could do a promo, last night was it. He cuts this incredible promo with MJF. Absolutely love this segment. I mean, it's weird because with All Out coming on Saturday, there's only two matches I genuinely care about. And the only two matches I care about were the two storylines that were really prominently featured tonight, which was MJF and Daniel Garcia. And then, of course, Hangman Page and Swerve. I feel like All Out is not that exciting of a pay-per-view this year. You know, all the times in the past that I've gone to All Out, it kind of became like a yearly tradition. I was there for some of the biggest moments in the company history. And quite honestly, guys, this is not the way to build to a pay-per-view that happens like 2 weeks after your WrestleMania. You know what I mean? Daniel Garcia killed it on his promo. I love Daniel Garcia. I mean, if AEW did not re-sign him, if AEW did not sign him at all, if they didn't lock him down, shame on them, you know. And I'll probably talk about this in the prediction stream tomorrow, but Daniel Garcia needs to beat MJF. And MJF needs to remain a heel. There's no reason why MJF should ever cross over into being a babyface again. You know, if you're looking at the strengths of MJF, he is much better as a heel character. And if you're looking at Daniel Garcia, he is very much a potential top babyface in this company. But I think what's even more intriguing, or what's more important, is that AEW creates a star here, because I'm watching Dynamite and I just feel like, man, they are lacking new stars. And I think a lot of times when I talk about stuff like that, a lot of the AEW tribalists get upset. But the reality is that we have reached a point in AEW where it is becoming very obvious that not creating new stars is catching up to them. Wardlow was a perfect example of this. They missed the opportunity with that. So Daniel Garcia, on the other hand, has the opportunity to become the breakout star within this feud. The promo was great. It was a great way to open up Dynamite. But also at the same time, too, it was a great way for me to get excited about All Out. And that's really what it comes down to, because AEW charges money for their pay-per-views. It's not like WWE where you just watch it on Peacock, right? AEW's job is to solely sell me a pay-per-view. And they're supposed to be doing that on weekly TV. And I feel like there's a lot of things that aren't hitting right now on Dynamite. But this is. And once I've realized that, like, that's a good thing. Like, it's not like the show is completely bad. It's not like everything was ass. It's just this particular storyline is like really good. And then there's a whole bunch of other stuff where I just genuinely don't care. I don't have like an emotional connection to it. And, you know, by the looks of it in the chat, it seems like a lot of you guys agree. So that makes a lot of sense. Definitely a strong segment to open up the show. Some other stuff that I liked about Dynamite last night. Toni Storm, you know, she's not a champion anymore. And a lot of times what happens is when somebody carries the division and they're not a champion and somebody takes the belt from them, you kind of wonder what it's going to be like. And I want to give props to Mariah May, because Mariah May had a successful championship defense against Nyla Rose. And I felt like Toni Storm was such a great women's champion. The concern is obviously, okay, well, how will it transition into a new reign? I'm pretty optimistic with Mariah May as the women's champion. Interestingly enough, I don't feel the same way about Mercedes. I don't feel like Mercedes and the TBS championship is exciting. I'm not excited about Mercedes Moné versus Hikaru Shida. I'm definitely not happy about that. But I watched Mariah May and Nyla Rose. It was a great match. Mariah May looks great as a champion. She is somebody that AEW should be building around. It looks like they are building around her. You know, when we talk about women's wrestling, when we talk about AEW and their women's division, they have a lot of stacked names. And one of the things that becomes very frustrating is that they've built up a nice women's roster, and some of them are floating away in Ring of Honor, and some of them aren't being utilized at all. But I was watching Dynamite, and when I saw Mariah May and Nyla Rose, I thought, okay, this went from one championship reign that was great to another championship reign that should be great. The problem that I have with AEW is that people you see on TV sometimes don't have the most momentum going into some sort of storyline or some sort of feud or some sort of match. And I think it plays into the effect of the crowd maybe not being as emotionally invested. You know what I'm saying? So, for example, I see Mariah May beat Nyla Rose, and that's great, and the people are into it because people are into Mariah May. But if you want Nyla Rose to ever get to the point where she could become something in AEW, you got to actually give her some wins at some point. That's important. So I look at a lot of excitement towards Mariah May and her potential reign. But then I look, for example, and I watch Mercedes Moné and Hikaru Shida, and I just don't care. And this is where I really, really have to stay firm on my opinion here, because it's such a bold opinion. But I do concede the idea that Mercedes is being wasted in AEW. She lost her aura. She is not Sasha Banks. There is a difference between Sasha Banks in WWE and Mercedes Moné in AEW. And Mercedes holds the TBS championship, and it does not feel important to me. There's just something about the way it's presented. I don't know what it is, but it's not impactful. And then I'm watching the Women's World Championship picture, and I'm thinking, wow, this is impactful. This is good. So there clearly is a disconnect in AEW while I'm watching AEW. That there's a perception problem that AEW has. There's a huge perception problem, and as you guys know, I say it all the time, perception is reality. So therefore, in my humble opinion, AEW has to switch up fast. Because I don't feel like the crowd cares about Mercedes, but the crowd cares about Mariah May. And no offense to Mariah May, but she is the least experienced of the two. She didn't have the WWE backing behind her. We have to acknowledge that. Mercedes came in as a groundbreaking contract, new signing, the most money a female has ever gotten paid in pro wrestling. And what she is doing on TV does not feel like it reflects that. And if that is a controversial opinion, then so be it. But it just feels like it's not important. And this is an issue that you will see in AEW. We have seen it time and time again. But perception is reality, and you have to do something quick to change people's perception, because I think it was very early on with the CEO gimmick that people were not interested. And I still believe to this very moment that feeling has not changed. For example, Jamie Hayter has a relatively quick match against rising star Robin Renegade. Okay? Now I say rising star because that's what Tony Khan says. Now Robin Renegade, talented. Nothing wrong with this match. And shout out to AEW for doing it, because it's important that AEW does feature more women, because they obviously have a loaded women's roster. Jamie Hayter beats Robin Renegade, obviously. But the attention is more so because of Jamie Hayter and Saraya. Saraya is backstage watching on the screen. So the thing is, when I say perception is reality, nobody watched this match and thought, oh my God, Jamie Hayter is going to lose. And that's fine. That's how wrestling works. You're going to have those quick squash matches. You're going to have those matches where people are there to eat a pin. But you have a lot of people not being utilized. So, for example, Deonna Purrazzo is not being featured on anything. Yeah, there's a vignette, but Deonna Purrazzo is not doing anything of any sort of relevance. Taya Valkyrie's not on Dynamite doing anything of any sort of relevance. And so I feel like we've gotten to the point, like with AEW, where sometimes they're just doing something or featuring somebody just for the purpose of being there. Where I think WWE used to do that a lot, but now WWE has gotten to the point where even if people lose, some good could come out of it. Look at Chad Gable. Chad Gable wasn't winning a lot, but then Chad Gable got to the point where now he's leader of a faction. He's involved in a massive storyline. He feuded for the IC title. Like, there was ways to go about it. So I'm not trying to be negative Nancy, but what I'm trying to say is that it's great that they're featuring more women. And I think that's amazing. But also at the same time, too, it is a little bit disappointing to watch AEW and to realize that they don't have their hand on the pulse of things. They don't have their pulse on the things, man. They don't. And like I said, we are going into a pay-per-view. This is not a pay-per-view that is free. This is a pay-per-view that costs money. This is a pay-per-view that AEW is asking you, if you work 40 hours a week and you earn your own money, AEW is asking you to invest in them by buying their pay-per-view. And as I said earlier, there was only 2 segments that really got me excited about All Out, and everything else doesn't matter. And we could sit here and argue about All Out being 2 weeks after All In or whatever. But I mean, that's an issue in itself, but the reality is this is a storytelling issue that AEW has. So Mariah May looks good against Nyla Rose. Nyla Rose ends up looking good. Robin Renegade, Jamie Hayter, it was fine. But at the same time, too, nobody's going to care about Robin Renegade after losing to Jamie Hayter. And nobody's going to care about Nyla Rose losing to Mariah May. This is the reality that AEW lives in. So I love seeing more women featured. I love seeing that they've taken that approach. But at the same time, too, the fundamentals of how AEW produces their show is madly inconsistent. Another example of this is Kyle Fletcher versus Okada for the Continental Championship. Let's talk about that for a second. Kyle Fletcher loses to Ricochet last week. Kyle Fletcher then wins a match on Collision, which, by the way, nobody gives a shit about Collision. You can't convince me otherwise. I know I don't care about Collision. I know other fans don't care about Collision. I know most fans who ever watched Collision no longer care about Collision because it is very, very telling based on the numbers. So that's where we're at. Kyle Fletcher loses to Ricochet on the A show, the main program that AEW cares about. He loses. Excuse me. He loses. He wins a match on the B-rated show, which is really a C-rated show because it doesn't get the love and attention that Dynamite gets. And then he gets a match against Okada. And he gets near falls on Okada. They're trying to suspend your belief. They want you to think that he could beat Okada. If he couldn't beat Ricochet, then what makes me think he's going to beat Okada? Nothing. So we did get to that point where Kyle Fletcher and Okada, good match. Okada wins. He's a heel. He's cheating. I mean, it is what it is. It is what it is. But that's why I say they got some fundamental problems. That's the problem. So I looked at all those things and I was just very meh. I don't care. But on the flip side, we got the Trios champs, BCC and Pac versus Ospreay and Orange Cassidy and Kyle O'Reilly. I don't know. It's a good match. I'm not really invested in it. I mean, I think that's really what it's coming down to is I'm just not emotionally invested into it. And obviously the reason why the match is happening is because you got Pac and Ospreay, which we know will be a great match. Nobody's going to question that. We already know that. We know those two guys have history. We know those two guys are going to be able to go out there and kill it. This match was a good match. This trios match, it's cool. The problem is you're not really offering much more substance to that. So when you watch a feud like MJF and Daniel Garcia, the reason why people are so connected to it and the reason why people actually enjoy it is because there's a lot of substance. There's layers to it. There's an emotional gravitation that you have to a storyline like that. The reason why people care about Hangman Page and Swerve is because there's a lot of substance and a lot of layers to that. So we are living in a time where it's not AEW's ability to tell good stories, it's AEW's consistency to tell good stories. Not everything's going to be a big hit, but that's the time period that we're living in. That's the time period we're living in. And so I do feel like it is problematic for that reason. I do. And I think that's why last night's Dynamite wasn't one that I cared about. But we should talk about Hangman Page and Swerve, because that was arguably the greatest segment that AEW has ever had. The execution of it was flawless. The planning, the focus on it was flawless. The emotional attachment to that segment was flawless. Don't forget, there was a time period when Swerve invaded Hangman's house. Karma's a bitch. So we got to a point in this specific storyline where now Swerve has his childhood home. He bought his childhood home. I knew the minute that they uploaded that video on Twitter earlier in the day, I knew exactly what we were getting. I knew Hangman Page was going to burn that bitch down, and thank God he did, because in the 5 years that AEW has been around, this was their greatest segment ever. And trust me, they've had some really, really good segments, but this one was the greatest segment that they've ever had. But it's not the greatest segment ever just because a house got burned down. It's the greatest segment ever because there's a real emotional connection to this feud. It feels like a real feud. It feels like wrestling isn't real when you're watching it. And these two guys are incredibly talented. And it goes to show you how much Swerve has improved and grown since the time that he was WWE NXT North American champion. I said this yesterday in my video, so maybe if you guys didn't watch that video, you might not know this. If you did watch the video, it might be redundant, but I did talk about Swerve and Hangman Page being the main event of All Out. Tell me one storyline that feels more impactful than this one. None of them. Nothing. Nothing feels more important than this storyline. The world title isn't on the line. This is a blood feud. And we have gotten to the point with AEW as a company where the world championship doesn't feel more important than this feud. I don't care about Darby Allin. I don't care about Jack Perry. I don't care about the Elite. The Elite had all the opportunity to be the biggest storyline in the company. They literally almost killed Tony Khan. That seems like a thing in the past, but this feud actually has legs on it, and it feels like a big deal. And for that reason, it should be main eventing All Out. It's a fantastic storyline. But it's not just the storyline itself that's good. I mean, everybody's hooked into it because of the writing, the promos, the adrenaline, the intensity. I mean, there's a lot that should be said about how good it truly is. And I think that's one of the best things that AEW could have right now. This is a huge way to end the show. This is a huge way to get people excited about your pay-per-view. Maybe even strong enough on its own to get people to buy the pay-per-view. But there's something about the rest of the show where I just simply don't care. I mean, for crying out loud, Jon Moxley and Marina Shafir, seems like there's like some inconsistency in that too already. And we're just 2 weeks into that story. So I watched this and I saw this and I thought, damn, this is problematic. It's all over the place. This company is all over the place. It's all over the place. It's all over the place. How did we get here, man? How did we get here? Chat. How did we get to the point where AEW is all over the place? How did we get to the point where AEW's attendance is less than 3,000 for an episode of Dynamite? How do we get to the point where Collision and Rampage are now seeing record low numbers? Dynamite is seeing record low numbers. This is not me being a dickhead. This is me just being very honest about the situation at hand. AEW lost a lot of steam when CM Punk left the company. They did. CM Punk left the company and everything else started to fall apart. I have said this so many times all week on my live streams. I said, guys, 2024 has been pretty good for AEW storyline wise. The issue with AEW is that they're not always consistent. I'm watching last night's Dynamite episode. MJF, Daniel Garcia, incredible. Hangman Page and Swerve, the greatest segment the company has ever had. But everything else just simply doesn't matter at all. When Cody Rhodes first left AEW, I talked about it being live. I said, Cody Rhodes leaving AEW, you can tell there's a very huge difference in the way that the company is producing storylines and doing their TV show and the way they handle business. It was very obvious. That was the first strike. That was the first thing that really, really hurt AEW. It rocked them. But AEW figured it out. Then we get to a part where CM Punk has a feud, backstage fight with the Elite. And everything freaking changes. Everything changes. But then we get to a point last year at All In, 80,000 seats. CM Punk gets in a fight with Jack Perry. AEW fired CM Punk and they decided to build around Jack Perry. Now, I just want somebody to explain to me in chat. I'm reading the chat. You guys tell me. Maybe I'm wrong here. But is Jack Perry really the guy you build around instead of CM Punk? I have a hard time thinking about how anybody could sit there and genuinely think that building around Jack Perry is better business than building around CM Punk. I mean, that's what it comes down to. And by the way, AEW was so sure of it that they leaked the footage of CM Punk's backstage altercation. And I did not see one person that reacted in a way that made CM Punk look bad. A lot of people actually looked at it as like, wait, we got excited for this? So keep in mind that one of the hottest angles in AEW's company right now is the Elite storyline, which it obviously has taken a backstage, a step backwards for some of the other stuff. But that storyline had a lot of momentum, and they were trying to build around Jack Perry. That was very clear. Tony Khan chose Jack Perry over CM Punk. Nobody cares about the storyline anymore. It doesn't matter what backstage segments they have. It doesn't matter what they do on Twitter. But AEW has a decline in ratings. AEW has a decline in attendance. AEW has a decline in overall interest. Perception is reality. And because perception is reality, you have to keep in mind that at this very time, it is all happening under a company that does not have CM Punk employed. CM Punk buried AEW. To be honest with you, he killed AEW. CM Punk leaving AEW has essentially killed AEW. It killed at least a lot of their momentum. A lot of their momentum. And I'm afraid that once you lose somebody's attention, it's incredibly harder to get their attention back. So now what you have seen throughout the last 2 years is that AEW had so much inconsistency in their storytelling, so much drama, and so much negativity, and Tony Khan talking about WWE. And then you got CM Punk at Bash in Berlin taking photos with Triple H. But you know what people will remember? They're going to remember the time when the Young Bucks were dancing around the ring celebrating CM Punk's departure. And so what I think is AEW is in a situation where without CM Punk, people really tuned out. And AEW has to figure out how to be cool again. They have to figure out how to be cool again. The Hangman Page and Swerve storyline is so freaking good. But that's one storyline on a 2-hour show where there is so much more to watch. And I'm sitting here thinking, why can't they put the same amount of focus in other stories? So when you look at AEW and its downfall of ratings and attendance and everything, just understand that it has a lot to do with CM Punk. It does. It has a lot to do with CM Punk being gone. And it has a lot to do with Cody Rhodes being gone. And honestly, I feel like all AEW is, one more key person could leave the company. Maybe it's Kenny Omega. I don't know how invested Kenny is into AEW at this point. He's obviously got bigger things to deal with. But I'm just predicting at some point, I wouldn't be shocked if Kenny were to really explore the option of WWE once he's healthy. I do think that could be a possibility. I could see it very well happening. I think we will get to a point where somebody else who is a major contributor to AEW will leave. And that has to be acknowledged. We have to acknowledge the fact that AEW is in a situation where the interest is low at a time where I think even sometimes what they got going on this year creatively has been really good. That's what's making it more interesting. And I think a lot of wrestling fans who loved CM Punk in AEW, I think they wanted to see what CM Punk would do after. And we all saw CM Punk went to WWE and he's living the life there. And he seems to be really happy over there. And you don't hear about drama over there. And it makes you think about his press conference at All Out when he's talking about Scott Colton. When he's talking to Nick Hausman. That's how I'm looking at it. I'm looking at it as, man, this is a company that really does have clicks backstage. And there's always so much drama surrounding the company. I think fans got sick of it. But I think the big one was CM Punk, because people knew that CM Punk had his issues with WWE, and they waited years and years and years for him to return to wrestling, and they thought there's no way in hell that this will be an issue in AEW. And it happened in AEW. And then WWE gets a new regime and he goes there and he's absolutely thrilled. Yeah, CM Punk is the reason for AEW's decline. That's the truth. It's crazy to think about that. It is really crazy to think about that. I'm going to take a quick break really quick, get a drink of water, and I will be right back. We're going to talk about some other topics. Stay here. If you guys got any questions or super chats, drop them. I will read the super chats out loud, or become a member. We'll read them as soon as I come back.
Yes.
All right, we're back. Thank you guys for sticking with me. Yeah, so Dynamite was okay. That's it. I'm not going to say it was bad. There were some things I obviously didn't like. There were some things I did like. It wasn't terrible. It was just kind of who cares, right? We got three super chats. Superman Bass Fisher dropped a $5 super chat. WWE is filled with pros. AEW is filled with amateurs. I don't think that's necessarily it, to be honest with you. If I'm being completely honest, I really don't know if I agree with that. I just think AEW really lacks consistency, and I think they really lack certain fundamentals. I think WWE obviously has many years of experience. I think AEW is they're new, they're trying to figure it out, but I feel like some of those mistakes are costly. I don't think the company's gonna die. I just think those mistakes are costly. I mean, Dynamite, it's their A show, it's their flagship show, and it's less than 3,000 people in attendance, bro. NXT is selling tickets, and they're gonna sell more tickets than Dynamite just did this past week. I think that's kind of concerning, man. I really do. Thank you, Superman Bass Fisher, for the super chat. Appreciate you. We got $1.99 from Darth Bane. Darth Bane says, Punk versus Drew, Hell in a Cell at Bad Blood. Who wins? Drew McIntyre wins at Hell in a Cell because Seth Rollins is going to cost CM Punk. And Seth Rollins, CM Punk, WrestleMania 41. That's going to be another seed that's planted. And that's going to be absolutely insane. Guys, look how great Punk and Drew McIntyre's feud is. They're feuding over a freaking bracelet. But they've been able to get people emotionally connected to it, and that's why it's been so good. The same reason why people are emotionally connected to Hangman Page and Swerve. Destroy something sentimental, and you will have people absolutely despise you as a heel. And what's really strange about Hangman and Swerve, by the way, it's kind of like Punk and Drew. Who's really the heel? Who's really the babyface? I mean, if you look at Swerve burning down, having his house burnt down, karma's a bitch. He did a home invasion on Hangman Page, right? So, like Punk and Drew. When you really look at Punk, I mean, he's more of the heel, but he's been acting more like the babyface. So that is something to keep in mind, obviously. That is something 100% to keep in mind. But yeah, Punk loses to Drew McIntyre at Hell in a Cell. Seth Rollins will cost CM Punk the match. You heard it here first. Thank you, Darth Bane, for the super chat. Right hand Cam dropped a $5 super chat. I saw the writing on the wall for AEW after I went to a Battle of the Belts 3 in Grand Rapids. I thought the product was getting stale, and I was right. And it's interesting because Grand Rapids, Michigan is not necessarily a big market for AEW or for WWE. But yeah, I mean, it's just lifeless. And they're hitting markets that are lifeless for them. So that is something to keep in mind. There's definitely a way to rebound. This year, I feel like creatively they've been a lot better, but consistency is still an issue. And I think maybe people are going to judge AEW not for what's on their product, but for what's happened outside of the product, the social media, the drama, the fights, stuff like that. Perception's reality, bro. Perception is reality. And I've gone to wrestling events. I've gone to several AEW events. That excitement that was there at AEW All Out 2021, it is not the same this year. I can tell you that for a fact. There's a reason why I'm not going. I sat in a suite and I saw Ruby Soho and I saw Adam Cole and I saw Bryan Danielson and I saw them pull off one of the best pay-per-views ever. That AEW, I'm afraid, is long gone. And it's unfortunate. It's unfortunate. Thank you, Cam, for the super chat. Appreciate you, my boy. Andre Benson dropping a $2 super chat. Those first 5 or 6 episodes of Collision was fire. Of course. It had an old school feel. The storylines were great. The matches were great. The presentation of it was great. It felt like it was an alternative to what Dynamite was. Now, today, I'm watching Collision, and it feels as lifeless as Rampage. It feels lifeless. And everybody says AEW shouldn't be like WWE, but the reality is they should be like WWE. Do a brand split. Separate the rosters. Keep titles exclusive to certain shows. Yeah, that's a real thing, bro. That is definitely a real thing. Thank you, Andre, for the $2 super chat. Appreciate it. Daniel Dixon dropping $4.99. He says, what does TK do if Warner Bros. Decides to walk away because he wants more money than they are willing to pay AEW? I personally don't believe that Warner Bros. Discovery will walk away. I would be genuinely shocked. I've been saying this for a long time. If AEW and Warner Bros. Discovery do not put pen to paper, I would be absolutely shocked. Because no matter how much I can criticize AEW, they are extremely valuable to Warner Bros. Discovery. Let's not get it twisted. A lot of the criticism I give is justified, but it doesn't change the fact that they are a valuable TV product for Warner Bros. Discovery. So I don't even think it's a possibility that Warner Bros. Discovery and AEW do not sign the new deal. I genuinely believe they will. But we'll see. All these TV networks are in debt. So is Warner Bros. Discovery. They're all in debt. They're all losing money. They all thought the switch to streaming would have worked out in their favor, and they were all wrong. And I know this because I talked to people in the TV industry. I worked in the TV industry prior to being a full-time YouTuber. I know. I've had those conversations. All those cable services, all those TV networks, there's a reason why you got Fox and Warner Bros. And Disney and all these companies trying to come together and figure out a deal to become more valuable. There's a reason for it. And the reason why is because standalone streaming services are not valuable. WWE knew this right away when they had the WWE network. The technology was there and it was cool, but they knew that it was not valuable or sustainable long-term being on their own. You have to partner up with other companies. So I do think Warner Bros. And AEW stay together. I think it's still going to be a good TV deal. I've never once doubted that. I've said this since day one. I still believe that. Daniel, thank you for the super chat. We got a $4.99 super chat from David Primero. He says, is it just me or what? But I think NXT No Mercy is much better than Bash in Berlin. NXT pay-per-view had a ton of surprises and unpredictable outcomes. Yeah, I mean, I think for the point of analysis, I mean, I think, like, I agree. I think No Mercy was a great pay-per-view. I still think Bash in Berlin was a great pay-per-view, but Bash in Berlin was like a filler pay-per-view. In NXT No Mercy, because they don't do so many pay-per-views, I feel like they have been in a situation where their pay-per-views are a little bit more impactful. I thought All In this year was really good. I don't have the same excitement for All Out. And that was a short period of time. So it's only been like 2 or 3 weeks since the pay-per-view. So yeah, I don't know. It's not just you, man. I get it. I get it for sure. And I appreciate you for the super chat. Thank you. Thank you so much, bro. Let's see. Because I definitely have more that I want to talk about. So let's get to it. You know what's actually... Chat, I don't know if you guys saw, but AEW actually removed, by the way, they removed the win-loss records. I kind of want to talk about this for a second, too. And I could just show you guys so you can see what I'm talking about. So if you go on AEW's website, you know, before, like right over here, like under the names, it would show their records, their win-loss records. AEW has gotten away from this. They decided to remove the win-loss record from the product. Now, I could be wrong. I think it was January, but, you know, the wins and losses and the rankings, Tony Khan was bringing it back, and that fell apart really quickly. So I don't know if you guys saw this, but I want to show you this. And it's actually worth talking about because we could talk about AEW creatively. We could talk about attendance and ratings. But let's just talk about the fundamental core values of AEW. Some of the things that they promised us on day one. A sports-based wrestling product. At times, it feels like it's sports-based. With the wins and losses not being on there, it definitely doesn't feel like a sports-based product. But it's all gone. I don't know if you guys saw that, but it's all gone. And I think AEW pretty much just lost track of what they were trying to do. I think they lost track of their vision. And I feel like that is one of the biggest issues that you can make as a company, is having a mission statement, having a declarative statement that tells the world what you're going to be and telling people what you're going to do and then not following through on it. By the way, this is like a terrible trait for a lot of humans in general. There's a lot of people that do this. They sit there and they talk about all these things that they're going to do. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. I've met a lot of people like this, by the way. A lot of people. I've met a lot of people, and I say it all the time. I'm like, don't talk about what you're going to do. Just shut up, do it, and make it happen. And so, I don't know. For me personally, I looked at this as a little bit of a disappointment. And I know I've had conversations with people from day one when we talked about sports-based product. So many people have tried. So many people thought it would be a good idea. And for a while, it seemed like AEW was actually going to make it work. It wasn't the main focus of AEW. But now, AEW literally can't decide if they want wins and losses to matter, if they don't want wins and losses to matter. Maybe it's incredibly hard to track. But to me, it just seems like AEW can never make up their mind on the win-loss record. And personally speaking, I think that's a mistake. And so when I talk about how AEW is an inconsistent company, they're inconsistent even with what they were saying from day one. And I think that's unfortunate. I think that's actually quite sad. I think it's quite sad to see that AEW got to the point where a lot of things that they said they would do, or a lot of things they said they would be different from WWE, it turns out that wasn't necessarily true. And I do find that to be a pretty big bummer, honestly. I think wins and losses are actually important to wrestling, but I don't know. I was there day one. I remember reporting on this before the company even came around, and just to see that they've gotten so far off track. But like I said, look, I mean, just look. Look, let me pull it up again, just so you guys can see. This is literally how it was. Where does it show their rankings? That was a big selling point. AEW is spending millions of dollars for the Young Bucks and Okada and Mercedes and all these people, right? What happened to the rankings? They got rid of the wins and losses. They got rid of the power rankings. They couldn't stay consistent with it. This is how you can tell a difference between the WWE and AEW. You can tell. And I get it. Tony Khan is rich. He's a rich guy. He owns a lot of businesses. He makes a lot of money, and he's a smart guy. And I understand that he hasn't ran a wrestling company like WWE. WWE's been in business forever. But what you guys are witnessing is a company that is truly inconsistent. That's what you're seeing. You're seeing that they are very inconsistent, and it comes down to the fundamentals. It comes down to the fundamentals. There's a lot of people that make shit happen. There's a lot of people that watch people make shit happen. And there's a lot of people who just simply don't make anything happen at all. And I think Tony Khan is kind of like in the middle of that. I think Tony Khan looks at these ideas and he says, hey, I have a great idea and it's going to work. But then he doesn't know how to execute. By the way, the worst kind of leaders in this world are the ones that just have good ideas. You can have a lot of great ideas, but if you've never executed a great idea, you'll never be successful. And maybe this is a little bit harsh, but this is why I'm a little bit more pessimistic with AEW than I am with WWE. And that's why I truly remain 100% transparent with you guys. I look at this and I say, oh, it's not a big deal. It's just wins and losses. But it's not just the wins and losses. It's not just the power rankings. It's the start and stop pushes. It's the idea that they want to push somebody and then they can't push somebody because they don't really have a long-term vision. They lack execution. And again, this is a company that's asking you to spend $50 this weekend on a pay-per-view. So just keep that in mind. They're asking you to spend money. They asked you to spend money 2 weeks ago, and now they're asking you to do it again. It's just a different ball game. It's a different ball game. This is the harsh reality. I'm not trying to bury AEW. I like a lot of people in AEW. AEW has brought me to countless events. They came to Detroit and I was invited, and that was amazing last year. But the reality is this company is not the same company that it once was. I saw somebody in the chat say, look at Takeshita. He beat Kenny Omega and they took him off TV. Again, lack of execution. It happened with Wardlow. It happened with others. And it's crazy. So if something such as wins and losses get pulled and people are getting start and stop pushes and they're getting rid of power rankings and they have these ideas and they don't really commit to them, it is actually a lot harder to be optimistic for their future. It is. So I don't know if you guys saw that. I want to show it to you. I want to bring it to your attention. Keep in mind, you know, they can always bring it back, but they've done that before. They got rid of it. They brought it back. They've done that a couple times. When they brought it back, they didn't actually stay consistent with it. I don't know. Very odd. Very, very odd. But I want to know what you guys think about that for sure, because that is kind of disappointing. That was the thing that in the beginning they did pretty damn well with it. So they did well with it, and I guess maybe that's one of the downsides to it. An idea that was actually pretty good, but then didn't get executed long term. Nothing more disappointing than that. Remember, that's how we bought into the vision. So, yeah. Pretty unfortunate, guys. Pretty unfortunate. Another story that I want to talk about is Bryan Danielson. Maybe you guys saw this, maybe you didn't. And if you didn't see it, it's okay, because I'm bringing it to your attention. Bryan Danielson was WWE reached out to him, basically. Now, on the main channel, I talked about this about a week or two ago. He was trying to get the trademark for the yes chant. Obviously, Bryan Danielson was Daniel Bryan in WWE. It wasn't necessarily a cease and desist, at least that's what he's saying. In a new interview with Luke James, he basically clarified that his manager texted him and said, hey, this trademark is available. Do you want to get it? And he's like, how much does it cost? And he says it wasn't that much money. So he says, okay, sure. But then shortly after, he got an email from WWE and their legal team stating that this was infringing on this or that. And he's like, dude, I'm not trying to sell anybody anything. I just do my own thing. Now, keep in mind, nobody really knows what's happening here other than the fact that WWE is going after Bryan Danielson for the yes chant. Now, keep in mind, in AEW, he hasn't done the yes chant. The wrestling fans will do it, but he hasn't. They don't have the yes, yes, yes in his entrance theme song. It's not part of his identity. It's not part of his merch. We all thought it was going to be part of his identity. We thought it was going to be part of his merch. That wasn't necessarily the case. And that's because WWE reached out. Now, WWE does have the tendency, by the way, to let trademarks go. I mean, we've seen sometimes, like, they just don't care about the trademarks, or sometimes they're not as invested in the trademarks. But there have been people that got released or they quit WWE, and then years later the trademark becomes available. WWE lets it slip through the cracks, and you know, that talent will end up getting the trademark. I know a thing or two about trademarks. It's really not that hard of a process to get one, and it's not that expensive to get one. But WWE obviously went after Bryan Danielson. I think the reason why they went after Bryan Danielson is because Bryan Danielson probably doesn't have plans to go back to WWE. I think he's kind of made that very clear. Like, we know he's at the tail end of his career. We know that once he drops the AEW World Championship belt, he will not be full-time in AEW, which that makes sense. But I do think we have gotten to the point with Bryan Danielson that, like, even after his career is over, he's probably going to be working in AEW still. Maybe you guys didn't know this either, but he is part of the disciplinary committee for AEW, which actually I think it's a good thing, having a experienced veteran in that role. Like, that's cool. But I think he's been so public about his love for AEW and what it means to be in AEW that WWE was like, well, fuck it. We're not going to be able to sign this guy. And if they're not able to sign him, they're not going to be able to bring him back, right? We'll prevent him from making money. And that's essentially what they're doing with the trademark thing. Now, by the way, this is not a dirty tactic. WWE has done this before. They've done this with other wrestlers. So I want to show you guys that. I want to tell you guys about that. And also just a couple things you guys should know too. Bryan Danielson, you know, he couldn't use the name Daniel Bryan in AEW because that's also owned by WWE. But you have other wrestlers being able to take their names to other companies and stuff. So like at times it seems like WWE is being petty. This is one of those times where I think they are. You also have times where WWE is like, hey, screw it, you could go do your thing, we don't care. And it's hit or miss. And I think WWE chooses based on what is actually valuable. Now, I don't know if you guys think the yes chant or whatever is like a valuable, you know, thing, but for me, I look at that as an intellectual property that could have a lot of money coming in. Because when Daniel Bryan was in WWE, we all saw all that money coming in for merchandise. The red shirts with the 3 S's on it, you know, like that was a very valuable IP for WWE. And that's what WWE's in the business of doing. That's where I think AEW probably screws up the most, honestly, is the intellectual property aspect of things, because we all know that, especially in like the TV and entertainment business, trademarks are such a great way to make money. And as long as you keep renewing as long as you keep doing it, like it's, I don't know. I feel like, listen, not to have a brain fart, but like, if you come up with IPs, for example, and you create merch and video games and all these different things, right? Like you can make money on it. We have gotten to a point where in the TV and entertainment business, a lot of companies are making a lot of money. Warner Bros. Discovery obviously had the intellectual properties for Batman. Like anytime they want to license that out, they can make money on it. They can make residuals. WWE has these trademarks. They own these trademarks. Anytime they want to make money off of it, they can. And AEW doesn't tend to do that. And I never understood why AEW doesn't tend to do that. But in this event, WWE is preventing Bryan Danielson from making money. And in turn, it's preventing AEW from making money. But if you look at the reports, usually what ends up happening, any trademarks that are usually filed for AEW, by the way, I don't know if you guys knew this or not, but a lot of them, it's the individual wrestler going for the trademark. Like it was Bryan Danielson going for that trademark, not AEW. So sometimes you'll see Chris Jericho apply for new trademarks and he'll do stuff on TV with those trademarks, but they're not owned by AEW. So that's actually a really major point as to AEW having that disconnect. Keep that in mind. Keep that in mind. For sure. You need to keep that in mind. Because WWE figured it out from a legal aspect, from a merchandising aspect, from a financial aspect. It's just better to own these trademarks. And sometimes for people, they think it's not a big deal. And maybe Bryan Danielson doesn't care as much because like he says, he's not trying to sell anything. But if he owns the trademark, no matter how much he tries to tell you that he ain't trying to make money, like no matter what, it doesn't matter, because if you own a trademark, you can make as much money as you want. I see some people in the chat saying, I thought you can't own a common word. Well, it depends on the purpose that you're trademarking something. So that is something to keep in mind as well. What you trademark could, you'll see like AEW applies trademark for AEW Collision for entertainment purposes, TV, exhibition, wrestling, whatever. If you look at the USPTO, the United States trademark office or whatever, like you have to have a reason for why you're trademarking it. Because you can have the same thing trademarked, but for other reasons too. So that is something I have seen before in the past. So that is something to keep in mind, obviously. Definitely something to keep in mind. So yeah, who knows? WWE went after Bryan Danielson. I thought that was kind of crazy. I could totally understand why WWE would do it. Now, was it a formal cease and desist? I don't know. It doesn't sound like it, but they definitely went after him, and we'll see what happens. I want to go back to some super chats because I did miss a few while I was talking. By the way, thank you everybody who dropped a super chat. We're at the tail end of today's stream, so if you guys want to get those last minute super chats in, go ahead and do so. Justin Kennington dropped a $4.99. He says, I feel Bad Blood has the chance to be the best WWE pay-per-view of the year. Justin, I appreciate the super chat. I mean, look, they got to build it up, man. That's next month. They got to build it up. They have some very strong storylines that are happening. It's really cool that they decided to bring back the Bad Blood name because it's obviously a classic. You know, you got Metro Boomin doing promotion for WWE, so WWE is treating it like a big deal. We'll see what happens. We'll see what happens. I will never call a pay-per-view the best pay-per-view of the year before it happens, but with the way WWE is right now, they have been very, very good about that. So, who knows? Who knows, man? Literally don't know at all. Appreciate you, Justin. We got another super chat. Right hand Cam dropping a $2 super chat. Is it true that AEW is leaving TBS or TNT for ESPN? No, that is not true. They are in Australia. They got a TV deal for ESPN. In America, we don't know what they're doing. But like I said earlier, I do think they will be streaming on Max, and I think they'll have their shows on TBS and TNT. True TV is being rebranded to TNT Sports, so I think that's where you'll see Rampage or Collision, but we'll know within time. Thank you, Cam, for the super chat. Darth Bane dropping a $1.99. He says, will a TNA star win an NXT title or vice versa? Yes, I 1000% believe that will happen at some point. 1000%. I think at some point we will see a title exchange. It's got to be the right person. It's got to be the right time, but I do think WWE will, in fact, get to that point for sure. Thank you so much, Darth Bane, for the super chat. We got more super chats. Dwayne Jackson dropping a 50 bomb. Shout out to Dwayne Jackson. He says, as far as AEW Collision needs to move from Saturday, maybe going to Friday or Tuesday. Use Collision like WCW did with specials like Clash of Champions. Do a Collision special once every quarter. Get rid of Battle of the Belts. Yeah, I mean, look, this is a great super chat. I do hate the time slot. I'll say that. I don't like weekly television on the weekends. I'm too busy on weekends. I know everybody else that does YouTube is too busy on the weekends. Collision, I used to review it. I used to talk about it all the time. The reason why I don't is because it's meaningless. You know, I look at my business as a perspective of the amount of time that I put in and what do I get out of it. Even as a fan, I do that, right? But now I got to think like a business person. So from a business perspective, there's no purpose for me to watch AEW Collision anymore. That's the issue. Now, if Collision moved to Tuesdays or Thursdays, which, by the way, the rumor is, I can tell you guys, there's a little bit of a rumor. I heard a little something that maybe Collision will move to Thursdays after the new TV deal is done. That's what I've heard. Don't know if it's true. Don't know if we should bank on it. Don't know if we should bet on it. But that's what I've heard. If that were to happen, that would be a lot more ideal. As far as using Collision like specials or anything like that, I don't necessarily agree. But I do like the idea of them moving the date 1000%. An AEW Collision should move the date. So we'll see obviously how it goes. Dwayne Jackson, thank you for the 50 bomb. You are a good man. Let's see. I got some special sound effects on here. And we should start doing them when we start getting these larger super chats. So let's hold on. Hopefully that's not too loud. Shout out to Dwayne Jackson for the 50 bomb. Appreciate you, my boy. David Primero, $4.99. I think I remember before Daniel Bryan left WWE, the condition for him is that he can leave but cannot use the yes chance. That's a very interesting thought. I actually don't know if that's true. I feel like I've heard that before, but quite honestly, I don't know. I don't remember. And it's really strange because that sounds about right. It does sound about right. But then too, like his whole situation with WWE, it was so long ago. Like it feels like it was a long time ago. So I don't know. That would be really crazy to think about though. Think about that for a second. WWE's like, go do your thing, but you can't take the trademark. Trademarks are valuable. People forget how valuable trademarks are. They're extremely valuable. Extremely valuable. Merchandise, video games, anything that Brian Danielson would want to do with that trademark, he can do with it. And WWE is going to be hesitant and they're going to say, no, you can't do it. Why? Because WWE, greedy, they're selfish. That's what business people do. That's why they buy trademarks, bro. That's why you buy trademarks, and that's the reason why WWE, they have a shit ton of trademarks. And sometimes they lose trademarks. Sometimes they forget about them. They have so many that they can't even keep up with. That's why I got to have a good legal team. David, thank you for the super chat. Appreciate it. Ladies and gentlemen, that's going to conclude our stream today. A beautiful stream. Tons and tons of super chats. Got some new members as well. I appreciate you guys. Thank you so much for all the love and support. This was a great episode. Again, Dynamite, hit or miss. I don't know, man. But the Hangman Page stuff was sick as hell. Super excited about it. Tomorrow we're going to do AEW All Out predictions. Spoiler alert, I don't really give a shit about AEW All Out, but maybe I'll have a change of heart. We'll do predictions. It's always fun. It's always fun seeing what else we got. Yes, there will be another video today around 4 o'clock. It should be scheduled out by then, as well as the highlights from this show will be on more Ango as well. Appreciate you all for coming through. Love you all. Ladies and gentlemen, I'll see you next time. Peace.